Hey there, Pisces. This is Seven Scorpion Tarot, and I want to welcome you to tonight's reading. So, tonight there is a lot going on in our sign, my fellow Pisces. I am a Pisces sun. Let's see, we've got Saturn, Neptune, Venus, and the North Node. North Node is freshly in our sign here. Yeah. So, I hope we weren't planning on having any kind of realistic thoughts around what time we need to leave, our dreams, relationships, or our destiny. Delulu is a Solulu. I think it's going to be that time for everybody. There's a lot going on in the world right now with fires and political stuff and whatnot. Delulu may actually be the Solulu. We may need to lean into that Piscean escapism to step away. And that's not a bad thing. It's not a bad thing to need to take a step back from the current events of the world. I know I am very susceptible to doom scrolling, and that can be a form of negative escapism for sure. Very maladaptive very quickly. Like the speed with which that becomes maladaptive is impressive. It's not quite the same as like just daydreaming or sticking your nose in a book or playing a video game or something like that. It can get pretty dark really fast. Uh, I'm kind of trying to stay away from any of my feeds that are not exclusively memes. Uh, it's a little heavy out there right now. So let's see. We'll do a self shadow ego. And let's see, maybe all that combination of energy. Where where's that head of the dragon? That hungry head of the dragon leading us in our psyche. What's it trying to consume? Where's it taking us towards? And I've heard a lot of interpretations of the north and south nodes. Like it's the north node is where we're headed, the south node is where we're coming from. There's some much more in depth explanations of those. But I was wondering recently too, because I'm trying to like take a step back um, and get some more foundational knowledge in astrology of like what does that actually mean, the north and south node? They're lunar nodes. So it's where the orbits of the sun and the moon intersect. And so when we hit eclipse season, the eclipses are occurring on the nodes, as I understand it. Might be wrong. But I was wondering like how do you determine like which is the north and which is the south? Like how's that work? And it's because the orbits aren't perfectly flat. So where the highest tilted one is the north and the lowest tilt is the south. If that makes sense. I thought that was interesting. One of my goals for this new year is to expand my astrology knowledge. Ooh, okay, this is really apropos. 10 of blades, so 10 of swords in reverse. Can't get any worse from here. The node has shifted nodes have shifted to we're in the lead, we are the head of the dragon, it's our turn. Uh, Maybe that head of the dragon is consuming all those difficult things to make way for the path of destiny, for the way up from rock bottom. And it's interesting how there's like one facing nine, and we're in the year of nine. Seppuku just came to mind. Uh, so what could that be a metaphor for in your life? That that self-sacrifice. Hmm. Is that what leads you out of rock bottom? Of like it can't get any worse from here. So like I don't know, like a Hail Mary or something? Like are you in a situation that it can't get any worse, so might as well like hit the big red button, see what happens, see what it does. You could be in a situation where you've just tried and 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 tried with these smaller swords. So now you've got one more big one that maybe you didn't want to pull out, that you didn't want to lean on. But this sword, this is the thing that turns it around in the self of it could be a perspective shift that, like, you know what, you've been tolerating really bad treatment for one reason or another. Like, I'm not trying to place any kind of judgment on the why, but it's just you may have been in survival mode. You may have had other priorities, what have you, that whatever the situation is, you put it on the back burner and now you have time for it. But while you had your back to this situation, you accumulated some swords back there. And maybe your back has reached capacity on the amount of swords it can hold. So now there's something going on in the self, which I'll start shuffling for the shadow. Maybe shed some darkness on what's going on. Interesting. Uh, what needs to be pulled from the darkness to turn this around in the self? Or has the authentic self gotten so sick of whatever it is going on that something happened to turn something around? You turned a corner. I was just talking about that in the collective reading it did recently of that that turn from why aren't you treating me better? This doesn't feel good to I deserve better. Screw you. That's a hard turn. that's a hard turn, not just for you, but for everybody involved. Um, especially including the people who got used to you being a doormat. That's that's something they're just going to have to get over. you know, when you reach that point of self-worth where you're like, no, get off of me, like take your boot off my neck now. And if they don't, twist the foot, they won't move. uh People don't like change, even if that change that you demand is reasonable, because it makes their life difficult. Like, they have to apply effort where they did not have to apply effort before. And that can cause, and will, can and will cause friction. Definitely something I've learned about boundaries is the amount of friction that's involved. Because it's definitely not as simple as, here are my boundaries, people just obey them. That is a utopia. Would make my life a lot easier. Unfortunately, there still appears to be some lingering, my boundaries appear to be optional to some people, which that's not how this works. And turning that corner of like, why aren't you respecting my boundaries, to, you're going to start respecting my boundaries today, or there's going to be consequences for that. Like, you can totally do an if then. And it's really up to you. Like, also depends on the situation as well. Like, you can do a, this is what my boundary is, flat. And then if it gets crossed, like, you can do a, this is, you knew what my boundary was, whatever. However it goes, this happens, like, if you cross it, this is going to be the consequence. If they cross it, consequence. Don't, no. Like, don't ask permission to enact the consequence once the boundary is known. Just move forward with it. And in a lot of cases, not all, but many, I don't have kids myself, so when I'm talking about examples, I'm referring to adults, for the most part. Adults know better. They do. There's a lot of weaponized incompetence floating around. Um, People are trying to cover their butts as opposed to take accountability, or they're just trying to be lazy. Back to the doormat example. Um, they got used to not having to put in effort, so it's like, well, you're so much better at this than I am. Like, you would be too if you were putting in an effort as well. Page of coins in reverse. A couple reversals. Okay. That's definitely a child. So some inner child work in regards to the material realm. So that could express itself as reparenting. Uh, since this is in the shadow side, there might be some reparenting to do with yourself. Uh, I'm just gonna go back to that doormat example since that's what I brought up. And like, no judgment. I think I said that, but no judgment. Um, if you were raised in an environment where you got in trouble for standing up for yourself, it's no wonder like you would develop like codependent tendencies and things like that. Like, I'm not trying to judge anybody. I went through many, many years of accepting treatment that I deserved better, like for sure. But in regards to reparenting, uh, John Bradshaw is generally regarded as like the guy for that. He's primary material. I like to get the interpretation of experts from, like, they read the primary material and then I get their condensed nuggets from that. And the person I like for reparenting and inner child work is Patrick Tahan on like Instagram, YouTube, whatnot. And like I've said in my couple previous videos, referencing resources like not an endorsement, not sponsored, so on and so forth. But he's very smart. He really knows his stuff. I really like his content. Very relatable. Um, it's not like fed at you. Like, this is someone who went through his own struggles and is now helping people. Like, it's a really good resource. And reparenting is such an important part of moving out of these difficult situations in the self, because that can definitely bring you to rock bottom of like consistently going after people of like, why aren't you treating me better? Why aren't you treating me better? Because that's a reasonable request for when someone's treating you poorly, to expect them to treat you better. That's reasonable. 100%. Uh and if they are aware of their behavior and they continue to do it, oh man, do you have every right, reason, etc., to be furious with them. Like, especially if you're dependent on the situation. And it's important here, I think, to note like how people can twist like therapy talk and like boundary speech back at you of like, well, my boundary is that you conduct yourself in this way. No, my boundary is about the type of behavior I am and am not willing to accept and the consequences of crossing those lines. That's what a boundary is. And this may be very new for you. It's new for me. Uh there's a significant learning curve when it comes to reparenting, and the type of anger that I have of, yes, I accepted poor treatment in the past, and you knew better. You knew you were treating me poorly, and you did it anyway. Oh, do I have words for people who treated me like that? And they deserve those words. They certainly deserve those words. I'm going to start shuffling for the ego. You know, me living with PTSD, I can definitely get stuck in rumination land. And that's a very Piscean theme. So maybe there's a word of caution in that, to not get caught in the escapism of like, when I get to the party, I'm gonna point my finger in his face and I'm gonna give it right to him and yada yada yada. Maybe that's best left for some, some escapism into that, but then step away from that and what would be the practical solution to if you encounter that individual? Would it be better for you to walk away? Is it better to, like, what is in the best interest of your inner child, and explore that question without judgment, without I need to be demure, I need to be mindful, whatever. Forget that. What is best for your inner child? And then you can start to like deconstruct and like get further down into those paths of, does my inner child want me to go straight at them? If yes, is that wise? you know, every situation's different. If it's in your personal life, maybe. I don't know. Some people really do deserve a talking to. That talking to doesn't necessarily need to be at the top of your lungs. It doesn't need to be at the bottom of your lungs either. And it all depends. Like, and I think when you come out of that shell of tolerating bad treatment, you might get met with some resistance of, like, well, why weren't you more considerate of my feelings? Like, same dude, same. That's the question I have for you. Uh, and don't let them push you around. Like, hold people accountable. Like, hold that ground of, no, this was bad, and expecting me to be the one to carry the burden of, oh sure, I'll navigate myself around you, I'll mold myself to you. No, that's codependency. uh and it can get even like worse than that. That can get into manipulation from the other side of, like, oh, but you made me look bad. That was you, bro. That was you. I was just reacting to the way that you treated me, and I have every right to. Mm. uh, like, what do they say? Respond, don't react. Most times, yes. Most times, yes. Sometimes, no. I'm not a saint. So we've got the Eight of Wands, and those kind of like plopped out, and so a message may be very surprising. And ooh, 10 of coins in the ego. Do you get a message of bliss, of happiness, eternal happiness? I want to go Piscean with this. I want to be as least literal as I potentially can. So, a message, and this, I don't know if this is the exact configuration, but in the Rider Waite, the um, Ten of Pentacles, they're arranged like the Kabbalah, the Tree of Life. So, is this a message from the ego side of your psyche in regards to one of these aspects, or all 10? Material. Or maybe we all got the message when I was rambling. uh, but that's quick movement. Or maybe it's when you get the message, when your ego gets that message from the shadow, like when those communicate, when you've like, and this might get a little bit deep into like internal family systems, therapy modality, but when those aspects of like the inner child and the inner adult, when those are unified, there's like quick movement to the 10 of Pentacles. That's like that realized self. That realized self leads you to the life you're looking for and quickly. It's almost like in conjunction with the node change that you are kind of colliding with your destiny. Interesting. And when I say that, I mean, it's like you're rising to meet your destiny. Uh, I'm very much like your birth chart in astrology and any tarot spread and whatnot. These are potential outcomes. You have to be the one to rise to meet that path of fate that's in front of you. It's just like when you go out to the store and like, do I take a left or do I take a right? Like, you, fate is what lies on that left or right path. Destiny is you making a choice, you choosing a path. And I think the path that we're choosing, us Pisces, is ourselves. Of the North Node is in our sign. We're pursuing that authentic self. And the book, The Undiscovered Self by Carl Jung, just came to mind. So maybe that's a book recommendation. And short. If you're gonna dive into Carl Jung, that's a good place to start. The Undiscovered Self. Um, but we're choosing us. We're choosing me to say, hey, I matter. I've known it this, like, I mean, I may have had a difficult time accepting that, but on some level, I knew I mattered this whole time. I know I mattered. If you chose not to treat me that way when you knew perfectly well I mattered, oh boy, that is up to you. That's a decision squarely on your shoulders. Like the excuses people will make for like, oh, don't let people treat you that way. Yes, do not accept poor treatment. And they made their choices too. Like, they need to be held accountable. That's sort of the insidiousness of codependency, is that we will take all the blame, all the responsibility, all the fault, all the everything. And the people who really did us some harm just get off scot free. Kind of a bummer. I don't know. A little soapboxy. Maybe my fellow Pisces are going through something like that too. That's got me riled. Or maybe I can smell the Pisces in the water and it makes me want to be super protective because I know how I've been treated in my gentlest, kindest moments. I don't really appreciate it. Risk and commitment. Ooh, okay. So, I mean, this part seems like commit to yourself. Like, and fortune favors the bold. Like, Ten of Pentacles, fortune favors the bold. And that could be commitment too, uh, in a very literal sense. But risk, they've got the little clams here. And they don't know what's on the inside until they crack them open. Do you need to commit to whatever choice it is you're hemming and hawing about? Like, is it, do I pick this one? Do I pick that one? Like, which one? And be mindful, because I did say, like, fortune favors the bold. Pisces can get pretty bold uh, out here in Delulu land. And I say that with love. I love Delulu land. I love slipping into a fantasy to escape, just to like back out of whatever it is that's currently going on that's got me feeling like the Ten of Swords, you know? And I would say that you're worth the risk. You are worth somebody taking a risk on you. That if a Ten of Pentacles presents itself, if a you get a message of the Ten of Pentacles, that I mean, be leery if they offer that like right out the gate, like love bombing. Thank you very much. Uh, but you or someone else, like maybe it's time to take a risk on someone. And maybe getting comfortable with the idea of someone taking a risk on you. That it's okay to explore that possibility of the Ten of Pentacles, that even if the inner child is struggling with events of the past, that you've heard these words before, you've maybe you've been through situation after situation after situation, whether it's business partners, friends, whatever the situation is. If you've had to struggle in your life to a point where you're needing to reparent yourself, those past experiences are likely built on an inauthentic version of yourself. So when you take a new risk after you've found your foundation, you're taking a risk with a much more solid footing that hopefully will lead to the real deal. But overall, I hope this helps. I hope this resonates. And if it doesn't, I hope the next one does. Thank you so much.